Alright guys, welcome to Python here. Now, before we start getting our hands started with coding and developing different functions and scripts and all that cool stuff here, let's talk about what Python is, okay, and kind of its general use cases and different things like that before we start working with it too much here, okay? So first off here, what is Python? Well, version 1.0 was released in 1994, but it starts development in 1989 here. So basically there is some pre-releases going on, there is some alpha testing, so there's some beta testing, but the version 1.0, the official release, was released in 1994, okay? And the most current version today is version 3.10. So you can see that we had version 1, version 2, and version 3 here. So it's seen some major updates, and it's going to continue to see updates all along the way here because people are still working with this and improving the language itself here. But you can see that really hasn't changed a whole lot. Version 1, version 2, and version 3, right? Like I said, it continues to see updates, so it means that we're going to continue to see development with this platform, this programming language here. And since we are seeing updates here, that means that generally speaking, the skills that you learn today here, they're still going to be useful tomorrow. And that was really important for me when I first started off. We're going to talk about this a little more with coding and programming and just skills in general. Like a lot of my certifications now are with AWS, which is Amazon Web Services. And if I'm dedicating a lot of time to learn something here, I want to make sure that's still going to be useful tomorrow, right? Because that would be a waste of time. I learned something today and then nobody's using it tomorrow, okay? It's also a general purpose programming language here, and it's designed as a high level programming language here. So general purpose, that means you can use it for a lot of different things here. It's not something like SQL. We can really only use it for databases. And a high level programming language as opposed to a low level programming language is like this here. Python, this actually is Python right here, by the way. This is basically a screenshot from one of the scripts that we're going to use in some later videos here. But you can see that although we really don't understand what the stuff means yet, it's basically in English from here, right? So you can see for thing in my list here, and then we're adding kind of to this thing here, printing this out here. We don't understand what this means just yet, but we can at least read it. We can at least see some like plain English words in here. This is more of a low-level programming language. So if you know any maybe old school programmers or developers from like the 80s here, this is what they were working with back then, all right? And this is pretty insane here. This is actually assembly language here, and this is working with individual bytes in the memory here. We can see you're moving bytes around, and honestly, this is even tough just for me to understand here. I try to work with it a little bit, but I'm still not at that level just yet. But you can see how much more difficult this is than this right here. So this is more high level right here, and this is Python. This is more of a low-level programming language here. So it means that we don't have to do it makes it easier for us developers to kind of write stuff out here, right? In here, you have to move the individual bits and memories around and stuff like that. In here, you just have to type it out, okay? So Python is more beginner friendly, and if you're like me, where maybe you worked with a different programming language already, and then you kind of want to check out Python, it's extremely easy to learn here. It's actually so easy that the first time I kind of worked through Python, I almost forgot everything because it was almost like plain English to me. But yeah, it's very user friendly. A lot of people say Python is very natural to kind of type out. It's closer to human language. And that's not to say, that's not just closer to human language in terms of high level versus low level here. It's closer to human language, a lot of people say, as opposed to something like C or C++ or Java. Python seems to be much more efficient, much more simple for many people. Not for everyone here. When I first started probably really working with multiple programming languages, I actually found Python to be the hardest for me here, and stuff like C++ and C# to be easier, but that was just me. I'm a little weird. But yeah, it's very human-like, if that makes sense, okay? Now, the thing with Python, too, is that it's not only for software developers here, right? You can definitely use it to develop software here, but a lot of like average, everyday people who might not have the job description of being a software dev, they still use Python to help out their day, help out their job here. People like mathematicians, if you're dealing with really big numbers or dividing stuff or doing crazy stuff like that, they'll use this stuff here to write out different algorithms to make their job easier, right? Stuff like data scientists, if you're dealing with billions and trillions of pieces of data, you can't just plug that all into an Excel spreadsheet here. You need somewhere to sort that data. So data scientists, right, and make trends with that data. Scientists in general, if you're talking about atoms and calculating planets that are billions and trillions of light years away and trying to figure out the gravitational mass here, scientists use Python a lot in their calculations. So another thing that Python can use, even though they're not just software devs, right? SysOps and network admins, which I guess is kind of very similar in this case here. SysOps would be like system operations. So if you're in charge of a network, maybe you work for, I don't know, maybe you work for like an engineering firm and you're the IT guy there, keeping all the databases online, keeping all the servers online, keeping the company's computers online here. SysOps use Python a lot here just to automate their process. Same deal with network admins, keeping stuff safe. Security professionals, people like pen testers or hackers, when you're trying to maybe test the security of some type of facility or test the security of some type of organization here, Python is a tool that they use a lot to automate their testing processes. And they have different tools that are programmed in Python too, all right? Marketers, people, if you're If you ever gotten really in depth with marketing, they might run 1,000 different variations of a similar ad here to see, what went better in different demographic groups. Maybe like, they ran an ad, but with this background, they changed this color desk to be red. And they found that resonated better with men in the ages of 18 to 25 and stuff like that. You'll see that, the amount of clicks went up, but then this, they can build different trends off the stuff here. Again, even though their job title is marketer, they still use Python because it is so easy. I shouldn't say so easy, because it's much easier to generate and calculate data from that. And everyday people going through a remedial task, right? Maybe if you have 1,000 video files, and maybe you're a video editor, and your video files are formatted like the date and then, the title of the video, stuff like that there. And your boss comes to you and says, this is going to work when you get the video title first and then the date. Well, you could sit there for 8 hours and type out every single file and rename it all here. Or you could design a Python script just to, do it all in 10 minutes and then go home for the rest of the day. So everyday people doing remedial tasks too use stuff like Python. And we're going to see that more and more, okay? So Python use cases. So this is more who would use it here. This is more what you use it for. Really sky's the limit with Python, especially in this day and age here. There's so many different things you can use it for automation and bots and stuff like that. Different web apps and web development here. You can design a server-side script that maybe somebody has, I don't know, maybe they do something in your website and then that gets sent to the backend and stuff like that. For scripting, either on your computer for task scripting, like we said earlier with those files, you can use it for photos. Maybe somebody uploads a photo to your website, and then you want to generate change it from a JPEG to a PNG, or change it from a color picture, or you want to change it from like a color picture to like a black and white picture. You could definitely do it with Python. Web scraping, maybe you're generating data, maybe you're scraping through some news website to see that the most popular term in the title of 2000, or in the news title of 2016 was word president or whatever, stuff like that. You can scrape through data and scrape through websites here and have that automatically run. This way you're not clicking through all this data, right? Stuff like machine learning. Machine learning is hot right now, right? Things like AI is being developed here, and Python can help you out with that if you're doing that. Testing, think of like, again, if you have a website here, the developers aren't necessarily the testers, and the testers aren't necessarily developers here. Sometimes there are separate teams here. Sometimes they are the same person. Let's say that you develop a website that has a sign up for a username and a password here, and you have to test to make sure that everything works here. So you could sit there all day and type in ab@gmail.com, abc@gmail.com, ab1@gmail.com, abspace@gmail.com, and see what accepts it and see what doesn't here. Or you could design a script to run through it all automatically, right? You can make it where it tests out special characters, stuff like, stuff like an exclamation point on your keyboard, stuff like, what's that symbol, the Nordic O with the slash through it, right? And these symbols sometimes can cause a website to crash, and they can cause a website, if the developers are good, they'll make sure that it doesn't accept special characters. Sometimes it can even go as far as affecting a database if that information is being sent there. But regardless, if you want to test it all by hand, you could do it, but it's going to take you a while. Or people develop Python scripts sometimes to do it all for them, and this way the computer does its job, right? It's generating all that data. You can sit back and have a call if you're taking a nap or do whatever you want to do, Stuff like data analysis. We kind of said before how data analysis, that's a mouthful right there for me. We have, data scientists here, data analysis. They can take large amounts of data, billions and trillions and millions of pieces of information here, and they can generate trends off that, right? And they can develop future projections to see where stuff might be going, where trends might be going. IoT, Internet of Things, right? A lot of times the Internet of Thing device itself may not be done in Python, but the communication between a server and the actual device, or different things like that, between devices themselves, that can be done in Python. So you can do so much different things with Python, and there's different packages that somebody probably has already done a lot of the hard work for you. They can just download it and then start to work with it from there. But we'll talk about packages more later on, okay? Anyways, from here, Python's also cross-platform, which means that works for a lot of different devices here. You can use it for Windows, Mac, Linux here, Raspberry Pis, I guess, which is, like I said here, Unix here, Mac and Linux are both Unix here. Raspberry Pis also operate on a version of Linux here. Servers, which would be, different Linuxes there too here. For the most part here, if you know how to code, and it's always going to be a little bit different because of file structure and stuff like that. If you make a Python script on one thing here, it should probably work it shouldn't be that much different, I should say here, for a different platform, okay? And like, this is actually kind of like a point. I remember when I first started working with code, and like, I really want to learn a programming language that people use. So I would go online and be like, okay, what did they use to make Photoshop? Like, what software? Okay, C++. So like, what programming language did they use to make a video game here. The truth of the matter is they use a bunch of different programming languages here. And I would be very surprised if you can think of one project or one team that's working on a project that didn't use Python somewhere along the way. Like we said before, maybe the main coding wasn't done. Maybe it was done in C++ to make this application, but the artist over here, used Python to help, I don't know, generate different art files and stuff like that. Or maybe the marketer over there, he used Python somewhere along the way to make some beta testing and stuff like that. So if you're dealing with a team, if you're dealing with a group of employees here or some type of project you can think of here, Python was probably used somewhere along the way there, okay? The cool thing about Python too, it's a huge community. So that means that there are packages, there's support, there's frameworks. So if you're trying to, I don't know, connect to some type of Raspberry Pi module, you could probably just import a package here. And it's going to make your life a lot easier. There's math packages you can just download and install. Not install, but yeah, download and install, and just do different things like that. It just makes your life a lot easier here when somebody already did the hard work for you, because there is such a large community for that. Think of it like, if everybody is working on a car or a certain model of car, there's going to be more information rather than having some obscure car that nobody's ever worked on before. There's not as much information out there, right? There's support. So you get stuck here, you hop on a forum and be like, hey man, my Python code isn't working. Someone's going to be able to help you out. There are frameworks and there's different services and products that work with Python. I think I mentioned AWS before here. There's something called Lambda. Lambda is serverless computing here. They like PHP, they haven't released anything for PHP to work with Lambda yet here, but Python it does. So the more you know Python, the more different things you can work with, right? There's different services that interact with Python from there. Like I said, there's assistance if you get stuck. There's forums. There's different people that can help you out here. And it's a skill set that's in demand, right? So a lot of people want Python developers, and the more people that want it, the more you all want it too, right? And the more money you can make too. And the cool thing about Python, this was taken from Stack Overflow here, this chart. I don't know exactly when this data was gathered right here, but you can see that Python, I believe this is the most asked question, the most answered question, stuff like that here. But you can see the subject of Python is way ahead here. Even in terms of JavaScript, which is very popular here, it's almost 18.5% versus 30% here. And you can see different languages from here. These are all pretty close. There's a big jump from there. But yeah, you can see how much further ahead Python is. And I think that's because of the large community behind Python, right? It's also a skill set that's in demand, like we talked about. People are looking for Python skills. Like I said, even if it's not directly for a Python developer job here, having it, again, some type of, if you're a marketer, having some type of Python skills will help you out here. And it's like a bonus on a resume. It's funny, I was thinking of I was watching a video where they were talking about why people hire Harvard graduates. And people say, well, what's the education? I'm like, no, that's not so quite. The fact that you got into Harvard shows that you're the top 0.01% or stuff like that here. Right? So maybe they're not looking for Python dev, but the fact that it's on your resume that you're proficient with Python shows that you're at the upper echelon of, candidates, right? It's kind of like, if we're both applying for a job or whatever, like I'm applying for a job and it's to do whatever, it's a manager at a store. And I say, hey, I also I'm fluent in Japanese, by the way. Even though they might not send me to Japan to talk with these people here, the fact that I taught myself Japanese, I should say here, shows that, I might be a little more, it's more a valued skill, right? We see these people as being, smarter, I guess you could say here. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. So that was your introduction to Python here. In the next video here, we're going to download some software to interact and start typing out Python. But you guys did fantastic. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you guys in the next video.